Most people read the news. A few read the warning.
At 58, Daniel still folded grocery coupons at his kitchen table, even though his retirement account had quietly crossed $1 million. He lived in the same modest house, drove a 15-year-old sedan, and still wore reading glasses repaired with tape. His neighbors admired his discipline, but they never saw the tightness in his chest whenever anyone mentioned spending money. Daniel had spent 35 years believing one dangerous thought: no amount of saving would ever feel like enough. That belief did not come from greed, and it did not come from wisdom, but from fear disguised as responsibility. When Daniel was 12, his father lost his job during a factory closure that shook their small town. He remembered unopened bills on the counter, quiet arguments behind the bedroom door, and his mother skipping dinner twice weekly. From that season forward, Daniel promised himself he would never let money leave him exposed and helpless again. So he became careful, then frugal, then severe, and eventually so guarded that even comfort began to feel reckless. He worked overtime, delayed vacations, ignored hobbies, and told himself joy could wait until retirement finally felt completely safe. But each new savings milestone only moved the finish line farther away, like a horizon retreating with every step. 100,000 became 200, then 500, then 800. Yet his mind still whispered, "Keep going." His wife, Elaine, used to ask for simple trips to the coast, quiet dinners out, and weekends with grandchildren. Daniel always answered gently, but firmly, saying maybe next year, after the market settles, after one more bonus arrives. Next year became many years, and slowly their life narrowed into routines designed more for protection than for living. Then Elaine got sick, not suddenly, but steadily. The kind of illness that teaches families how fragile postponement can be. Hospital visits replaced weekend plans, and Daniel sat beside her bed, calculating costs, while she watched the rain outside. One afternoon, she squeezed his hand and said, "We saved so carefully, but we forgot to spend time." That sentence landed harder than any market crash, because numbers could recover, but lost seasons never send refunds. Elaine passed away the following spring, leaving Daniel with security, silence, and a house full of delayed intentions. For months, he wandered through rooms stacked with caution, realizing thrift had protected his balance sheet, but starved his calendar. He opened a closet and found an envelope labeled "Someday Trips," still sealed, with brochures yellowed by time. Inside were maps of Maine, Santa Fe, and the Blue Ridge Mountains, all places Elaine wanted to see. Daniel sat on the floor and wept, not because they lacked money, but because fear had outlived reason. Many people think oversaving sounds impossible, especially in a world where so many retire too early or too vulnerable. But oversaving does not mean having too much money. It means sacrificing too much life for unnecessary financial certainty. Daniel had confused prudence with refusal, discipline with deprivation, and safety with a permanent ban on enjoyment. The tragedy was subtle, because society applauds restraint, even when it quietly becomes another form of financial imbalance. His spreadsheets were clean, his retirement accounts healthy, but his memories with Elaine were thinner than they needed to be. That is the hidden trap of oversaving. You can win the math and still lose the years. One evening, Daniel met an old friend, Martin, for coffee, the first social outing he had accepted in months. Martin listened quietly, then asked a question Daniel had never seriously considered. What exactly were you protecting the money for? Daniel began with practical answers. Medical bills, inflation, market crashes, emergencies. But his voice weakened before the list ended, because beneath those reasons sat a childhood fear that had never been examined, only obeyed for decades. Money had become his emotional armor. And armor is useful in battle, but terrible clothing for everyday life. That conversation did not erase his pain, but it opened a small door between fear and honest reflection. He went home, gathered his statements, pension estimate, Social Security projection, and healthcare notes, then spread them across the table. For the first time, he was not reviewing numbers to save more, but to understand whether enough had already arrived. This is where calm financial thinking matters, because feelings are loud, but reality deserves a seat at the table. So let us walk through the lesson, the way Daniel finally did. Slowly, clearly, and without shame. Step 1. Separate real financial risk from emotional fear, because they sound similar, but lead to very different retirement decisions. Daniel feared poverty, but his actual numbers showed stable savings, modest expenses, no debt, and multiple income sources ahead. Until you measure your true position, childhood memories and market headlines can control choices that facts no longer justify. Step 2. Define what money is meant to do, because unassigned wealth often turns into a pile guarded forever. Retirement money is not only for survival, it is also for dignity, flexibility, relationships, health, and meaningful experiences. When purpose is unclear, spending feels dangerous, even when the spending serves the very life the money was built for. Step 3. Create a spending boundary, because wise enjoyment needs structure, not guilt, and not reckless freedom. Daniel learned that a monthly enjoyment budget could coexist with emergency reserves, healthcare planning, and conservative investment withdrawals. Boundaries calm the nervous mind, because they replace vague fear with a clear system you can return to repeatedly. Step 4. Remember that time is also an asset, and unlike money, it cannot be replenished once deferred away. The healthiest retirement plan protects both finances and remaining seasons of strength, energy, curiosity, and companionship. Those seasons are not guaranteed to wait until your account balance finally feels emotionally perfect. Step 5. Review your plan regularly, because enough changes with age, health, family needs, and the life around you. A retirement strategy should mature like you do, becoming wiser, more flexible, and more aligned with what matters most. Daniel had built an excellent accumulation plan, but he had never built a thoughtful distribution plan for living. That missing half is where many disciplined people stumble, especially those praised for sacrifice all their lives. Accumulating wealth requires restraint, but using wealth well requires judgment, perspective, and sometimes the courage to soften. If this lesson speaks to you, subscribe to Old Money Wisdom for calm guidance on retirement without panic or hype. After several weeks, Daniel met with a fee-only planner who reviewed his income needs with plain, steady honesty. Together they calculated expected expenses, inflation assumptions, healthcare buffers, and a sustainable withdrawal range he could actually trust. The results surprised him. He had room not for extravagance, but for a fuller life than fear had allowed. So Daniel made 3 changes, each small enough to feel safe, but meaningful enough to change his daily experience. First, he created a memory fund, money reserved each year for family visits, short trips, and shared meals. Second, he improved his home with practical comfort, better lighting, safer stairs, and a chair Elaine would have liked. Third, he stopped treating every purchase as a moral test and began judging it by usefulness and meaning. His first trip alone was not glamorous, just a train ride through the Blue Ridge in early autumn. He brought Elaine's old scarf, sat by the window, and finally visited one of the places from the envelope. He watched orange leaves pass the glass and felt grief, yes, but also a quiet form of reconciliation. Not with loss, because loss never becomes fair, but with the truth that he could still live responsibly. And living responsibly, he discovered, did not always mean saying no. Sometimes it meant saying yes on purpose. He began taking his granddaughter for breakfast every second Saturday, paying the bill without calculating opportunity cost. He repaired the backyard bench, planted tomatoes, and joined a local walking group after years of polite refusals. None of these choices threatened his retirement, but all of them enriched the life retirement was supposed to support. That is another important truth. Meaningful spending is often modest, deliberate, and deeply human rather than luxurious. The danger was never a cup of coffee with a friend or a weekend train ticket. The danger was allowing fear to become so respectable that it escaped review for half a lifetime. Many people near retirement suffer from the same hidden habit, especially those who survived layoffs, recessions, or family instability. They know how to protect, delay, and endure, but they struggle to transition from defense into thoughtful enjoyment. That transition matters, because retirement is not simply the end of working. It is the beginning of using wisely. Using wisely means asking not only, can I afford this, but also, does this support a good life? A good life after 60 is rarely built from grand gestures. It is built from many timely, humane decisions. One safe trip, one repaired relationship, one healthier mattress, one class, one gift, one afternoon fully present. These things may look small on paper, but paper has never been the final measure of a life. Daniel still tracked expenses, still invested conservatively, and still respected risk, but the sharp edges softened. He no longer asked money to solve fears that belonged to memory, grief, and old uncertainty. Instead, he asked money to do its proper job: support shelter, health, generosity, and days worth remembering. That shift sounds simple, but in practice, it can be one of the hardest lessons after a lifetime of caution, because releasing control, even slightly, can feel more dangerous than the years of sacrifice that built the nest egg. Yet wisdom in retirement is not measured by how tightly you cling, but by how wisely you allocate. Protect the downside, yes, but do not imprison yourself inside a plan built to serve you. Leave room for your knees while they still climb stairs, for your eyes while they still love distance. Leave room for your friends before another chair at the diner falls empty without warning. Leave room for your children to know your laughter, not just your discipline and perfectly organized account folders. And leave room for yourself, because the person who worked and saved all these decades also deserves gentle care. Oversaving becomes a trap when preparation never receives permission to become participation in life. So review your numbers honestly, name your fears clearly, and ask whether enough has already quietly arrived. Then build a plan that protects your future without endlessly postponing the ordinary blessings available in the present. Because retirement security is not only the absence of disaster, it is the presence of steadiness, choice, and peace. Daniel learned too late for some dreams, but not too late to recover the meaning of what he had saved. And that may be the quiet wisdom here. Enough money matters, but enough life matters just as much.